from the All Indiana Podcast Network.
It's time for real conversation about the real issues that affect our communities.
Poverty, education, equality, and more.
This is Real Talk.
Real Talk with Reverend Charles Harrison.
Welcome to Real Talk on the All Indiana Podcast Network. I'm Reverend Charles Harrison, and on this episode, we're going to be talking about women who are the fastest growing group of gun owners in the United States today. What is driving that? Why are women purchasing guns now even faster than men? Stay tuned. Welcome to Real Talk on the All Indiana Podcast Network. I am Reverend Charles Harrison, and it is a cold and snowy day here in Annapolis. I came into the studio today, traveled back from Fort Wayne, Indiana last night, so I am excited about being in the studio. And also, this is the second show of the new year. And today I want to talk about a subject that I've really been fascinated with, really I would say over the last year and a half. I've noticed something on the streets as I have been walking with the Indianapolis 10-Point Coalition as we do these public safety walks and patrols and hotspot areas in the city of Indianapolis. And something that I also have observed as a pastor of a large church in the inner city of Indianapolis, and that is the growing number of women that I now see who are carrying guns openly. I have been on the streets of Indianapolis for 25 years, the work I do with the Indianapolis 10-Point Coalition. And in the work I do, most of the time when I'm out on the street and we're patrolling and we're trying to address the issue of violence in many of these neighborhoods, particularly that are experiencing large numbers of violent acts that are occurring. In the past, it was predominantly men, and you would see young men in particular who would be carrying guns or have guns on them. I noticed something particularly, I would say, in the last 2 years and really the last year and a half, this growing number of younger women that I see who are openly carrying guns. And I remember when I first started seeing it, I think it somewhat shocked me. It shocked me to see so many women. A lot of them had their guns in a shoulder holster, some carrying it on their hip. But I noticed this. I noticed these women with guns, and at first I was wondering, well, why are so many younger women carrying guns? What's going on out here? I've also noticed it as a pastor of a church. I've had a number of conversations, and I guess I was surprised at the number of women who attend church, who many of them carry their guns in their purses, or particularly some of the older women who may be 50 and older who are packing. They tend to carry their guns in their purses. Some of the younger women, though, tend to be a little more visible with their guns, even some of them who are in church. And I noticed that. I was just really fascinated by that, trying to figure out, what's going on today, that women are carrying guns on them and they're purchasing guns. And I started reading this article, and it said, as of 2022, women are the fastest growing group of gun owners in the United States. In 2005, only 13% of gun owners were women. Now, 1 in 5 women report owning a gun. What's even more staggering is that most gun purchases were made during the pandemic were made by women. that during the pandemic, most of the gun purchases in this country were made by women. And I started doing, some more research on this topic, and started asking, a lot of young women on the streets that we were encountering with 10 Point, why they were carrying guns. I started having, conversations with women who were members of my church or who attended church, or women that I've seen come in to the church for funerals and other things. And some women visibly had guns. So I was really curious about that and curious about what I was seeing, on the streets. And then I started also doing, research about it, because I know last year in Indianapolis, we broke a record in female homicides in the city. And I started hearing more and more stories about women being shot, or women not only being shot, but women being the suspect in a lot of shootings. It started to make a whole lot of sense to me based on what I was observing on the street in the large number of women that I was starting to see who visibly were carrying a firearm. And as I started talking to women about, why were they now carrying a gun, why were they gun owners, and there were two things that really stuck out to me, in my conversation with them. Was most of the women talked about owning a gun because they needed protection. That protection seemed to be the number one reason why they were carrying guns. They needed protection. Many women talked about because of domestic situations, that they were not going to have a husband or a boyfriend or a male in their life that they were going to allow to harm them in any kind of way. So they needed protection. They also talked about needing protection because of their own perceptions, their own concerns, their own fears about the rise in violent crimes in the city of Indianapolis. Well, many of them lived in neighborhoods where they were experiencing a lot of violence. Many of them were mothers. So it was not only for their own protection, but protection for their family. They were living in neighborhoods that were experiencing a lot of violence, and they felt like they needed their own protection. Protection from somebody trying to rob them, somebody trying to break in their home, and just overall protection in case they encountered something on the streets, they would have their own protection. And I started really thinking about this. We're now living in a time and in a society today where women now feel the need to protect themselves. So what does that say about our judicial system? What does that say about law enforcement? Do they no longer feel safe in the neighborhoods that they live in? Is an indictment, particularly for women who are involved in domestic situations or incidences, that they no longer feel like the courts are going to protect them from someone who may be abusing them, or someone they may be fearful of that may harm them, that they have dated, or someone they may be in a relationship with. And all of those things seem to be an issue when it comes to women feeling like they need to protect themselves. When you look at the numbers in Indianapolis, certainly you can understand why women may feel a need to be gun owners and carry a gun on them. We have had 9 consecutive years of the highest level of violence in the city of Indianapolis. We have broken a number of criminal homicide records over that 9-year period of time. It's been the highest level that we have experienced, and we're now seeing more and more women who are being the victims of this violence, including in 2023, we had more women killed than in the history of the city of Indianapolis. What is also real is that we're seeing a dramatic increase in domestic violence. My wife, who's a social worker, often talks to me about some of the clients and some of the concerns and fears that they have. And I know she's done some work in the past with domestic violence and just the number of women who are experiencing domestic violence, and they are fearful of their boyfriend or husband that they're now separated from, concerned that they are going to harm them. These are real concerns that we have today in our society when it comes to this whole issue of violent crimes, particularly as it is now impacting women. Now, many of you know that I am the leader of the Indianapolis 10-Point Coalition, and certainly I am a proponent of nonviolence. I believe in nonviolence. That's what I preach. That's what I teach. When I walk the streets of Indianapolis, week after week, several days a week, month after month, year after year, I'm trying to do things to de-escalate violence on the street and trying to get people to handle violence in nonviolent ways. That's what I do as a pastor, as the leader of a faith-based organization whose strategy is to reduce the level of violence. But I'm also dealing with the reality of what people are experiencing today on the streets, particularly women. And I know a lot of women are fearful today. They're so fearful because they are seeing and experiencing the violence in Indianapolis that has been historical over the 9 years. And even though I may not like it, personally, but I understand why women feel the need to have a gun. Because there's so much domestic violence. You can't have a dispute today or any kind of conflict because people tend to want to go to violence to try to settle it. And I know why people feel like that if I'm going to be in a conversation with someone, if there's going to be some kind of dispute, I want to be able to protect myself. And protection is the number one reason why women today are purchasing guns. And I cannot say that they should not do that because I know the reality of what's happening in the streets. There are too many women who are experiencing domestic violence, and they do not feel like the courts are protecting them, nor do they feel like police can protect them from a boyfriend or an ex-husband who may seek to harm them, or someone who may be experiencing mental health issues. For some women, just getting to their car from their home, coming from their car to get in their home, can be concerning to them because of the neighborhood that they live in. Some women are concerned about break-ins and stuff because they know that criminal activity is high in their neighborhood, and they want to feel protected. They want to make sure they have the ability also to protect their family. This is a larger societal issue that I think that we have to deal with as a society. It is clear that lots of people in Indianapolis don't feel safe. I'm always arguing with those who are in political office and sometimes in the administration, out of the mayor's office, and sometimes with law enforcement when they start quoting numbers of violence going down from one year to next, but yet when you look at the numbers at the end of the year, they're still at historical levels. And for many residents who live in these high crime areas, and particularly women, they don't see that violence is getting better. And it cannot be getting better if women now are purchasing guns at a faster rate than men are. And the reason they're purchasing guns is for self-empowerment and for protection. They want to empower themselves and they want to feel protected. If they're buying guns for protection purposes, then it says something about how they perceive our society today, or the neighborhoods in which they may live in, or the city that they live in, that they are so fearful that they feel a need to purchase a gun. Indianapolis, this is real. It is growing. It is a problem because now we're seeing more women who are also engaging in conflicts with each other that is leading to individual women being shot and injured and sadly shot and killed. But the vast majority of them are not buying guns to commit a violent act. The vast majority of women are buying guns out of protection. We need to address as a city, as a society, the issues that are causing women to feel the need to now have to purchase a weapon. This is the reality of what's happening today. And it saddens me that more and more women don't feel safe in our city. And this is the case in a lot of cities across the country. They feel like our judicial system has failed and is broken, that they feel the need now to arm themselves to protect themselves and their families. This is an indictment against us as a city. That the most vulnerable in our society no longer feel safe, no longer feel that they can be protected by others, that they now need to protect themselves. I stand with a lot of these women today because I want them to feel safe. And we must do better as a city. The courts must do better. The prosecutors must do better. Law enforcement must do better. The church must do better in making sure that we're creating safer neighborhoods and a safer city so many women will not feel the need to have to purchase a gun for self-empowerment and for protection. This is real. We cannot ignore this, and we cannot deny that it's not happening. I wanted to give that commentary today because I feel like that we cannot ignore this issue. I believe the number of women who are going to become gun owners is only going to grow. I think they feel that unsafe in many of our cities today, particularly urban cities, because they know the reality of what's happening every day in the neighborhoods that they live in and the city that they live in, that they want to feel protected because they're scared and they're concerned about their own safety. Let's do better, Indy. Let's address this issue. Let's have conversation. I'm going to be bringing in, over the next few weeks, women and groups that are trying to address this issue when it comes to protecting women and families from violence, particularly domestic violence, so that we all can be better educated about what women are experiencing and why they feel the need to be gun owners, to carry those guns to protect themselves and their families. This is Reverend Harrison, and I hope you have enjoyed this kind of dialogue today that I've had with you on Real Talk. I really tried to deal with the real issues that affect our community here in Indianapolis and across the country. I try to have a non-filtered conversation. I try to be honest as a community leader and also what I see as a pastor in this community. I hope that you will share this podcast today, and be sure to subscribe to this podcast and share it on Facebook and Twitter. I pray today that you have a blessed and you have an awesome day. And thank you so much for joining me on Real Talk.
This is Real Talk with Reverend Charles Harrison.
Be sure to like and subscribe to this podcast.
And be sure to check out other great podcasts on the All Indiana Podcast Network.
Online now at allindianapodcast.com.